Good morning, everyone. I would like to begin by introducing myself. I am Bernard Talloul, an advisory executive at Thornton, Malta. Today, we will be tackling the third pillar of this series of webinars, the environment, with this morning's theme being a breath of fresh air. It is truly said that so many lives have been lost to the pandemic, but has COVID-19 served as an eye-opener for humanity? Will we finally learn to appreciate that it is only through collective effort that we can take better care for our planet? With us today to discuss this interesting topic, we have four lovely panelists. First, we have Vincent Attard, a veteran in the environmental NGO community in Malta. He's championed multiple projects for nature conservation and education for sustainable development and wildlife. He has served as president of Nature Trust Malta since 1999, and he's also received the Order of Merit of the Republic of Malta for his endless contribution towards the environment. Secondly, we have Liane Mifsud. She's been serving as the Executive Secretary at the Local Councils Association since 2018. Liane has been influential in overseeing multiple local government initiatives related to the environment, including sustainable mobility, green environment, open spaces, smart cities, and the Slow Streets project, in collaboration with 45 local councils around Malta. Thirdly, we have Konrad Poulet. He's the General Manager of Malta Public Transport, having formerly served as Chief Officer for Land Transport at Transport Malta. He has over 15 years experience in the industry, and he used to be responsible for the regulation of driver training, testing and licensing, vehicle registration, goods and passenger transport. And finally, we have the panelist who perhaps needs the least amount of introduction, the Superintendent of Public Health in Malta, Profs. Charmaine Gauci. Graduating as a medical doctor in 1991, Profs. Gauci has since led various research projects in public health, while also, of course, leading the Maltese health authorities' efforts against the novel coronavirus. It's an honor to be joined by all four of you, and I would like to thank you all for being here. Now, during the lockdown period, there were notable changes to patterns of human behavior across the globe. One of the major ones being the reduced levels of car, air, and sea traffic. And this brought obvious advantages to the environment in the form of reduced air and sea pollution. Malta was, of course, no exception. Many participants will have watched footage doing rounds on social media of dolphins swimming in the Grand Harbour, as one of the many examples of the environment benefiting from the global slowdown in human activity. Considering the fact that all of you come from different backgrounds, you have public health, you have transport, local government, and an environmental NGO, how did COVID-19 impact your respective sphere? And I would like to begin with Konrad, please.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Bernard, and thank you, Thornton, for inviting me in this very interesting subject. Obviously the pandemic, with all the negatives that it brought about, it's a bit of an eye-opener, I would say, for many things. Obviously, I would focus on the transport side, which obviously being one of the main contributors to greenhouse gases and the problems with climate change is one of the most affected. I think we are in a position now to imagine what things would look like if we had to be a little bit smarter with how we adapt our lifestyles towards transportation, towards mobility. So what the pandemic has offered us is a reality rather than having to think and having to imagine and having to plan. That is what it would look like if we are a bit smarter, not to the extent, obviously, that the pandemic brought about. So I think it pushed a lot of companies, well, like ours, because people were not moving as much, so less people were using the bus, less people using the car, and so on. But that is not necessarily a bad thing. So a lot of people tell me, so you have a problem now because you're going to be carrying less people. That's not a problem to us. If less people are moving around because there may be remote working, or maybe these meetings happen virtually, in the end, that is going to have a positive impact on congestion, on traffic. Congestion is very expensive, both economically and health-wise. So I think the pandemic is a very important eye-opener for everybody. Particularly in the transportation and emissions side. So I think that people have realized that this is a change. I truly hope that we are able to capitalize on this mindset and we don't fall back very easily into our bad habits, and maybe finding a balance between using different forms of transportation and maybe even healthier travel like walking and cycling.
Agreed, Conrad, and this we'll be discussing later on. Vincent, what do you think?
Yes, as Conrad said, first of all, good morning to all listeners, and thank you for inviting me. As Conrad said, we saw quite a big change. I mean, the air quality in itself was already showing a lot of signs. I mean, it's not just Malta. We saw many countries like China, for example, where it's known to be very polluted and the air cleaned up. So nature, in a way, has a way to cope with certain issues if given the time to cope with them. I saw a lot of people, for example, during the COVID period, connecting with nature, which shows that we as humans need nature. I had the time to see people jogging, walking, cycling. So healthy exercise was becoming in green areas was seen very common. We also saw less traffic, for example. So there was a decline not only in air pollution, but also noise pollution. This led even to people working from home. So people were more inside and going out more for leisure. And I can say that during the semi-lockdown or whatever you may call it, we were flooded with a lot of sightings. We had a lot of sightings of dolphins, as you said, in the Grand Harbour around the Maltese Islands. Hundreds of turtles were noted swimming around the Maltese Islands. In fact, I was worried that we would have more than one nest this year, and it happened, because that's, how do you say, it's too much on our resources to help protect the turtles. We had people reporting hedgehogs, seeing hedgehogs, bats for rescue. So people were actually noting nature again for the first time. We saw a change in habits. For example, people started ordering their groceries. So again, instead of many people going to the supermarket, one driver was going out to actually deliver the groceries. So again, we gave nature a time to rest and recoup itself from the problems it was having with all this. And obviously also dust pollution decreased. So I think what we can say is that we saw that if we change our habits, we don't need a lot, but if we change our habits, we can see quite a big improvement. The only, I can say from my end, which was not good, was that then we started noting a lot of medical waste like masks and gloves in the streets, near ATMs and in various public areas, which then sometimes they end up in the sea, and again, they become a detriment to marine organisms.
Thanks for your point, Vincent. Liane, from a local government perspective, how did life change?
First of all, good morning to all, and thank you for the invitation. And local councils had to rise for the occasion, and we had to be proactive. Our office remained all open, 68 of them, because we are the lowest level, the lowest government level close to the citizens, hence we couldn't go on teleworking, all of us, so we had to stay at the offices, ensuring that our action do not affect the communities negatively. We also thought about the crisis as an opportunity to enhance the relationship with our residents. We had to move away from the model of delivering a service to and for people to a model of delivering the service with people. Hence, we find many volunteers assisting local councils. Our people had to require to build a new relationship with residents, linked to help support civil society and responding to the current situation. Local council used the social media much more, and online services had to become an important tool for us. We had to still do our daily obligations, such as waste collection, issuing of permits for workers to continue on building sites. So we had to find ways and means. We improved the dialogue and a more extensive network. We had to ensure that our elderly are healthy, our neighbours are safe, and the essential transportation and delivery system within the locality was in place. And after all, we had to ensure that the community is healthy. Local councils were there, councillors were there, assisting the elderly, calling the elderly, and we stayed in touch with the residents, basically.
Thank you, Liane, and I have to thank you all for the efforts that local councils have put in throughout this difficult period to help the community survive, not just go through it together. Profs, last but not least, I know you've been put into the limelight during the past couple of months. Public health has been at the forefront. How did life change during these past 2 months, 3 months?
Yeah, it was a complete difference. However, having said this, we're quite used to having situations where we have to step up our efforts in order to deal with specific situations. However, this was a situation which we had never dealt with before, of the big and enormous effort that we required. What was good was that in the start, with the public health people are quite limited in terms of numbers. However, we saw all the people coming on board. We saw many volunteers. Many of them would have been those volunteers who would have stopped working for whatever reason. So they came all to support us. Whilst many people were at home, we were here working or at the forefront. To add on to the various themes that my colleagues here have also presented, one of the biggest outcomes from this pandemic was the impact on air pollution, whereby everyone could see the streets, that the streets were literally empty from the cars, which we know are the biggest polluters. And hence, this would have made a big impact on the health of the population as well. And what I really wish to see is that we need to learn a lot from the way we were working, so that we won't go back completely to where we were before COVID. So this is an important lesson. And we're seeing a lot of companies who are still taking the efforts that were already taken during the COVID in terms of seeing how we can work with each other, and also how they can work within their own systems as well. I mean, even this seminar is being done, everyone from his own offices or even at home. So this is a way whereby we can work better, we can be more productive, less time is spent in going from one place to the other. I know it's nice to meet in person, but a lot of things we can do remotely as well, similarly as we are doing now at a lot of meetings. Even for ourselves, we are still doing a lot of our meetings between us and between others, even through the system. What we have seen as well is something which has been mentioned, is that there were a lot of consumables in this pandemic, a lot of disposables. We are all at the time advocating for the people to take care of the consumables. We are also advocating other consumables, for example, masks. You have the disposable mask, but you can have the cloth masks as well, which are good enough, and you can wash them. So this leads to less waste as well. And also from our end, the consumable that we were using in terms of healthcare professionals, we were very careful about the disposal of these consumables as well. Something which happened as well, we were seeing changes in the lifestyle of people. One of the most important things is that people started seeing more what are the priorities in life. And also health came up on the forefront, because everyone wanted to take care of their health, to make sure that they were healthy. So for us, health became a top priority in this country, and we hope to keep it this way in terms of people need to take care of themselves. What we really don't know is how is the change in the lifestyle. Our people have been eating healthier. Were they really doing so much more physical activity, or was it less? And another aspect is the elderly people, because previous to COVID, we used to tell people go out, meet other people, social inclusion, etc. There was a point during this pandemic where we asked them to actually stay at home. But the most beautiful thing was that they were being supported by other people. They were being supported by their neighbors, by their friends. The local councils were taking them shopping. So I feel here that the Maltese people all got together and supported each other, because we had one aim. We had one aim to be able to control this pandemic. So I believe that in all other things, if we make them priority, we emphasize on this, we can also beat many other things.
Thanks for your points, profs. And it's a very good thing point that you made with regards to air pollution and plastic pollution. In fact, I'm going to put up some statistics now with regards to some of the figures that we managed to extract from the survey that we carried out with regards to plastic pollution. In fact, 35% of people noted an increase in plastic pollution or in their use of single-use plastic in the past 2 months, while a study by the Institute of Earth Systems found that a 70% drop in nitrogen oxide occurred in March of 2020 when compared to the previous month. Now, Vincent, are these figures surprising?
No, not really. In fact, we were expecting this. The air pollution, we were quite aware that the air quality had improved quite a lot. In fact, you could feel the air, you could see also a clear vision. So we were expecting air pollution to go down. We only hope that the trends of people start realizing this in a way that they can even change their habits to better habits related to transport. Because as we all know, the Maltese love their car, so everybody, even if you go out to buy a newspaper around the corner, many people tend to use their car. And I think this showed that we can actually go and walk. As Prof. Gauci said, I think it was also good from a health perspective because people started exercising more in sites, for example, that we manage. We started seeing a lot of people walking, jogging, cycling. So the connection with nature was something marvelous in a way. And I think this also helps people to have even a mental, mental health, less problems with mental health because when you go to such areas, they help you. Obviously, plastic pollution was to be expected, where we have to remember that last year government was already aiming at phasing out plastic waste during the year 2020. However, COVID came unexpected. We started seeing that certain measures had to be taken to avoid any contamination. So this was our biggest worry. How would single-use plastic now come in again in the picture, and instead of phasing it out, it would appear more. But I can say that although plastic pollution was expected, and we did see a lot of plastic pollution, it still seems to be a bit under control, not exactly, but a bit under control in a way that we're not seeing as much as we expected. However, as I said in the initial, we still are concerned with some people who are in a way being irresponsible by just dumping their gloves anywhere they deem fit without taking them home, for example, and disposing of them in the right way. These end up on beaches. I've seen on our beaches these type of plastics, for example, plastic disposable gloves. And these, if they end up in the sea, animals like turtles would think they are jellyfish and swallow them. I just want to make a comparison. Last year, we had a leatherback turtle. It is one of the largest turtles found on the planet. It can weigh up as an adult to 800 kilos. And last year we found it. It was freshly dead. When we did the necropsy, we found 4 big plastic bags in its stomach where, because of this plastic in its stomach, it couldn't digest anything, so it died of starvation. So we have to be careful. We're doing a lot of campaigns right now. Next week we have a campaign on the beach to make people aware of the problems of plastic pollution, like these ice cream cups, ice cream spoons, that they increase the problem. And they don't only increase the problem because they are there and take a number of years to degrade, but also because in another study we're doing, we found that they also contaminate the soil, they contaminate the sand, they contaminate the sea. And we have to realize that today, even through microplastics and nurdles, we are ending up eating sometimes fish that is caught freshly from the sea, which would have taken in such plastic. And we have to be careful that we don't cause another health issue because we will be eating plastic in a way that is not good for our health.
Thanks, Vincent. And I'm sure, just as you said, education really is the way forward in this regard. So we can truly start giving environment the high priority it deserves. Now, from a public health perspective, is pollution, in particular air pollution, a serious concern, particularly when we consider a finding that was published in 2019 by the Respira project, which found that the Maltese population is between 2 to 5 times as likely to be subject to respiratory illness when compared to their Sicilian counterparts.
Yes, in fact, pollution is a big problem and has severe impact on the health of the people. In fact, we know that it causes severe respiratory problems, like, for example, the commonest one is asthma and COADs. We know that even within Malta, where you see areas where they're more highly polluted, you see that there is a higher incidence of asthma. In fact, apart from having asthma, we see that in these areas exacerbations of asthma as well. We also know that there is a direct link with lung cancer, and in fact, the attributable risk to air pollution is about 3 to 5% as well. So that is an important aspect to take care of. Also, the quality of life. Obviously, you can actually realize that when you have higher pollution levels. And there are also some studies which show that there is a link also with fertility, pregnancy, and also childhood development. This is an important aspect that we need to see to. If you look at levels of air pollution and you compare them to the accepted levels at EU level, we are almost on the right track. But if you actually look at the levels which WHO recommend, which are more strict, we are exceeding those levels. And WHO is the entity, is the body which actually correlates the pollution levels in terms of the health impact. So this has led to also various concerns, not only in Malta, but also at EU level, and also at WHO level. Malta as a member of the WHO Europe Environment and Health process. And in 2017, the ministers responsible for health and the ministers responsible for environment, all the European area for WHO, actually met and agreed that each member state will actually develop a process in order to deal with the impact of the environment health. This is actually called the Ostrava Declaration, because that was where it was signed, and Malta is actually developing a national portfolio for actions based on improving the health in terms of environment. And air pollution is one of these areas which we have given priority to as well.
Thanks, Prof. And it's very comforting to know that air pollution and air quality is being given the deserved attention.
Yeah. If I may, I think just to add something small, we all have to make a change, because sometimes you hear people commenting government should do this or the authority should do this, but in reality, this is what I always say, it's every one of us who's contributing to this air pollution thing, and we have to think about a change for our benefit. If you see the landfill, we say the landfill of Matap was there, but who actually dumped? It was all of us who dumped there, and all of us created the mountain. So every one of us should do their share to try and improve the situation. We can't just push it on one entity and say, if it isn't solved, we leave it there. So this is what I would like to add. Thank you.
Great, Vincent, and it's definitely perhaps a tendency of ours that we perhaps put the responsibility on others, and rather than taking it on ourselves. So perhaps we have to pull together to achieve this. Conrad, in the survey, in the Grand Thornton survey that was carried out, one of the many questions that we asked our respondents was whether they would consider using alternative transport to go to work, like their regular mode of transport. And a staggering 78% refuted the suggestion, citing practicality or independence reasons. Now, considering that 46% were still willing to work from home, and also considering the fact that successive governments have tried solving the congestion problem, the traffic problems that Malta has been suffering for a long while now. Do you think that teleworking is the way forward?
Well, transport, as has been pointed out, contributes around 50% of greenhouse gases, which is very, very high. It's not the car or the bus or the taxi or the bike. It's the people, basically. It's the way we behave and the way we use those modes of transport that cause these emissions. Changing behavior is always very, very complex. What is encouraging is that 10% of the people your survey have asked are saying that they're actually willing to make a change, which is a very, very strong indicator. Changing habits, changing modes of how you behave on a personal level, and people relate transport as being something very, very personal, no matter how they move around. It's a very big change for people. Our experience has shown that even with bus passengers, for example, between 60 and 70% of them, they actually have access to a car, but they choose to use the bus. Likewise, they choose to use other modes of transport. So the challenge, I think, and this is something that I always mention myself, even though sometimes they end up throwing maybe tomatoes at me when I say it, but anyway. The change is not to look at everybody using the bus all the time or everybody walking all the time. That's not realistic. What we're after is a balance. What we're after is finding a way to adapt our lifestyle. So, for example, choose a day in the week and you have less meetings or more of these remote meetings and use another form of transport for that day of the week. Choose a Friday, for example. I do it myself. I use the bus for different reasons to see what's going on as well, but even for practical purposes. Valletta, Hamroon, university, we shouldn't be going by car. We should be using other forms of transport. So my message to everyone is always, let's try to adapt our lifestyle. Within reason, with a reasonability approach, not going drastic, having nobody on the streets, it's not realistic. And we adapt our ways to be able to have a cleaner transportation. Because if we expect the transportation to adapt to our needs, it's not going to happen. As Vin said before, we cannot expect the government to solve all the problems for us or the authority. We have to do our part. So our message is always, let's take that 10% of people. Let's look at that 10% of people, what will make them switch to something which is more environmentally friendly. And let's find a way of making it happen as businesses, as individuals, as government as well. And then the message to the rest, the other 78%, is also to understand what will make them change, what nudges they need to make the service more attractive. Let's admit, public transport, for example, during the pandemic, overall we had reduced about 15 minutes during peak times in every journey, which is significant. And buses could run more on time. Buses don't fly, at least until now. So for buses to be on time, they need to have certain liberty. Likewise, school transport is the same. Okay, so school transport has the same challenges that buses have. So if these buses are given more priority using technology, more space, freeing up some car park spaces from the road, putting the car park underground, and the bus can pass or the school transport can pass, so people can still park in the area they need to park, but maybe underground, not on the road, and wasting that space when people can cycle and people can walk. I think that is where we need to work together, and government needs to be involved as well, to free up some space for people to move around. Now, if they move by bus, by walking, cycling, taxi, cab, it's fine, motorcycle, but they need space. Kick scooters, I think, will be a very strong mobility solution in the coming months. Why? Because maybe the bus might be not as attractive because there's a lot of people you feel safer not on a bus, okay? And the car might be something you don't want to go for, so there is a kick scooter. Now, kick scooters are a fantastic mobility solution, but they need space, they need a different mindset, they need education, okay? They need to have, people able to move around safely. It's a very big change, and in Malta, it could be a fantastic solution. So that is something where I think people will move towards. It's a very cost-effective, very green. They're electric nowadays. A little bit of health as well, because you will tend to walk after you go with a kick scooter normally, whereas if you with your car, you will try to go inside the office with it. So I think it's a mix, and this is my message. I think we need to find a balance. If we had to go completely from one extreme to another, it doesn't really work. It's been tried in the past, and other cities have failed. I think the solution is finding a balance and convincing people that using other forms of transport is good for the environment, but also good for themselves, also good for the pocket of the business. It's good for everyone. I think that is the reality.
Thanks, Conrad. And I appreciate here that we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, but rather putting in just smart little initiatives here and there to achieve the right balance. And now that we've mentioned public transport. Charmaine, Prof, I don't know if you have anything to add to this.
Yes. To add on what Conrad was saying is that what's important as well is that we try to reach out to the children. Because if we start teaching them early on how they are going to the places where they need to go, like to school, to the museum, to private lessons, to wherever, especially if they are within walking distances, okay, we can encourage them to walk. However, one of the most important things is safety. As a mother myself, if I had a young child, I would not let my child go to school if I'm not reassured that the roads are safe. So here we need to unite all together and make sure that we have our road safety as important as possible and high on the agenda, so that we will be able to have our children, for example, if they live within the same locality, they can actually walk to school. We had, even as health authorities, tried out the walking bus to schools, whereby we had parents who were responsible enough to be able to pick up the children from various areas within the locality and take them to schools. There are some which are still ongoing, but unfortunately some of them didn't get sustained enough to be able to continue. So we need to see how Malta is looking from a holistic aspect, so that we can encourage people from a very early age. I believe that if we instill these principles in the early age from children, they will be able to grow into a way that it's something which is natural, that you actually go by walk. We see people, if they want to go and buy some medicines from the pharmacy within the same locality, they actually go by car, and it creates a lot of difficulties. Why can't we just walk to the pharmacy within a walking distance? Okay? So these are things which we have seen happening during the pandemic, and we need to continue having as well.
If I may, we're trying this as well. I agree with Prof. Gauch about this, because we did in some places like Marsa Scala, for example, the walking bus has been having good results. They were doing it. It was a system where two parents or three parents would just go around with the car collecting the bags, for example, and another group of parents would just call house to house picking the children. Now it also offered the children time to socialize, walking to the school, wake up, have fun, start the day quite well. There were also children who are suggesting, and this is why I agree with what Prof. Gauci said, that we have to educate the children. We have to give them a voice. For example, children in Marsa Schlock School actually came up with the idea to do a bicycle rack. So they could cycle to school, those that live close to the school, and then they could put their bicycle in a rack. However, I agree we have to have the infrastructure in place, because if I'm a parent and I know I send my son or daughter to school, and on the way he might need to cross some roads near the school where it's possible. I mean, it's not everywhere is possible. At least we need to make certain areas that are closed for cycling, for example, that during the time of school, children can cycle without having to meet the traffic, the general traffic. So if we plan correctly, I think we can achieve a more harmonious, as Conrad said, we need to harmonize everything and make everything sustainable. We're not saying stop traffic, it's impossible. We're not saying close the roads, it's impossible. But if we manage in a way like we're doing, trying to solve the traffic solution and finding ways to allow children, for example, to cycle to school within the village, it could be another option that would encourage even adults, because what we've seen from across schools is that the children today are changing the mentality of their parents and grandparents. This has happened in waste, and we hope they will continue to bring about a change in society.
Thanks all for your contribution. Liane, from a local government perspective, I know there were some initiatives with regards to open spaces and the Slow Starts project. Can you walk us through these initiatives, please?
Yes, definitely, Bernard. Way back in October, the Local Council Association has launched the division for 2020-2024, and obviously sustainable mobility was one of the main 4 pillars to be addressed in this vision. We were very busy during the COVID period, because we have taken the opportunity of that situation to start planning and drafting the Slow Streets project. Basically, the Local Council Association, together with the Ministry for National Heritage, Arts and Local Government, and in collaboration and coordination with Transport Malta and the Ministry for Transport, Infrastructure and Capital Projects, we will be working together with over 45 local councils on an action plan to make sure that mobility is safe, sustainable, healthy and efficient. This means that we need to adapt the concept of public spaces and mobility to this new reality. We are doing an action plan basically that will enable us to move around easily and more safely with sustainable and healthy means of transport that benefits everyone. That means we are promoting cycling, walking, the use of public transport. The main aim, as I'm saying, is that we promote sustainable mobility, but in parallel with other educational campaigns. As Conrad was saying, change, especially change in mentality and in culture, is not easy. So this project needs to be backed up with an extensive educational campaign. To achieve this, a series of temporary interventions are required to ensure that our localities are safe as possible now and in the coming weeks. As Prof. Charmaine Gaucho was saying, having kids using bicycles in the streets is not that safe, but we are trying with individual local councils. They are meeting a group of experts who are trying to find ways and means of how they can create certain pathways in the locality, even to connect one locality to another. We are thinking of having our first pilot project to link Msida, Pietà, Taġbix, Sliema, St. Julian's, so that people have a pathway to travel safely in a sustainable mode of transportation. So slow streets might be the benefit of all, and if there are interested participants who are listening to our webinar, they can even send us an email to send them the full, because there is a full booklet with how this is going to be implemented. We are taking measures which are temporary, meaning that they can be removed if in the long run, let's say we are seeing that this might create an issue with another locality, for example, closing or narrowing a road in one locality can create traffic congestion in another. So all measures are temporary. They can be reversible.
Thanks, Liane. And
don't make them too temporary, because then the temporary will give up after a week and that's it. Let's try and make it work. We have to make it work, you know. Yes, it will be hard for public transport as well, but we're willing to support the initiative, you know, want to make it work.
Yes, I can send you the full booklet.
And we have the Q&A is open, and we'll be addressing it in a couple of minutes. And there are some more questions already being asked, but we'll move on to it in a second. Now that we're talking about, instead of car transport, we're moving on to air transport and tourism. Profs, you were at the center of the debate with regards to opening the borders, when to open the borders, whether to open the borders. And then finally, on the 1st of July, the airport was open. What can you walk us through the thinking behind opening the airport when it did?
Yeah, in fact, we had many people telling us, please don't open the airport, because obviously everyone realized, so this all started in China, then it moved to everywhere. So if we had Malta as an island all closed up, so it will divide Malta, right? However, that's not an option. We realize we are an island and we depend on a lot of our materials. Just think about food. We get most of our food from abroad. In fact, throughout the pandemic, We continued with the supply of all the goods and products which we required. We didn't actually stop any of that through our ports, and we still maintain the situation. However, we had to move on into opening the airport. It wasn't a question of if, it was when. So that is the situation whereby we found the time whereby the number of cases which were ongoing within the community and also the R factor was low enough so that we can move on into opening the airport. And we actually chose which countries we would open to, and the identification of the countries was based on those countries which had a good epidemiology in terms of the transmission of the virus. So as you see, the countries we have now at present, which are open, are those countries whereby there isn't very high transmission of COVID. And we are now in the final discussions of what other countries will be open as from the 15th of July. However, linking this to air transport, aeroplanes, etc., as well, are one of the major contributors as well to. So this was a scenario whereby I hope that in our lifetime we won't see again, whereby you see all the aeroplanes parked within an airport. Okay? For some people it looked beautiful, for some other people it wasn't, because it's economy, work, etc. However, we need to learn as well on how much, for example, speaking for myself, I used to travel a lot for a lot of conferences and seminars. We managed throughout all this time to continue working without actually going to all these seminars and conferences, etc. And that had big impact myself on the work, because I can remain with my team here working, etc., whilst continuing with our needs. But also an impact on the costs and also the pollution which leads all up to it. So I firmly believe that we need to continue with what we've learned and what we have seen that actually worked as well, and continue with this practice as well, even post-COVID.
Thanks, Prof. It's truly insightful to hear it from the authorities' side. Now we're unfortunately running out of time, so I would like to ask the final question and answer me in the shortest possible way. Now that the lockdown measures are being lifted, has humanity learned its lesson with regards to how to tailor its personal behavior towards caring for the environment, maybe? Or will we revert to the old normal? Have we learned any lessons, Conrad?
Well, I'm sure we've learned lessons. Whether we're willing to take the plunge and keep them there it depends. My message is climate change. Before this pandemic, you know, we had a very strong little young girl pushing the politicians, you know, internationally on a climate change emergency. And this is real. Climate change is a real emergency. I believe our parliament has even declared it and accepted that it's an emergency. And my message is, you know, to imagine ourselves, you know, how much we complain about these masks we have to wear and how intrusive it is and how irritating. But if the environment keeps on going in the way it's going, we will have to wear masks because we cannot breathe the air that we want to breathe, not because we're protecting ourselves from a virus. We will have to protect ourselves from the air. And that is so drastic. It's such a situation we can't even imagine that we have to do something about it. So I really hope that what we've experienced with the pandemic, which is very negative, I mean, people lost their lives, so we cannot just diminish it to the experience we had in Malta. Around the world, it has been huge, and it still is in a lot of countries. So my message is, let's really think how we can make these little differences, because in the end, when you get these little differences and put them all together, the difference will be very, very big from a climate point of view.
Thanks, Conrad. Liane, any lessons that we've learned?
I'm sure we have learned very nice lessons, but I think we were also urging ourselves to go back to the normal routine. We missed the offices, the colleagues, I think. And in my opinion, yes, lessons were learned. It was a shock for us all, I think, to change so quickly. But I'm sure, even at a local council level, it was difficult for us to have all our employees to be given teleworking, because we had to keep our offices open Unfortunately, many local councils didn't have the infrastructure to send employees working from home. So yes, we had to still travel at home. There were unprecedented expenses, which our budgets, our locations weren't catering for. So yes, it was a challenge. But even we have learned, apart from the environmental aspects, we have learned that online communication is more needed in the public sector. In fact, we have also launched, as Local Council Association, we have worked on the USafe platform. It was a crisis support platform. We have created 68 Facebook groups, one for every locality, which then they were kept under USafe platform, so that we facilitate the communication between residents and the local council. Each local council group was administered by the respective local council team. It is still in use, so that we will avoid unnecessary traveling to go to the local council offices to ask something, or we create more a sense of community with the aid of online media. We are working also on an online permitting system. We are trying to shift our services more online. We introduce e-post machines in the local council's offices, internet banking. So yes, we learned so much from this experience.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Liane. Vincent, from an environmental perspective, have we learned anything?
Look, first, I depart from the fact that we are not talking on climate change now, we're talking on a climate crisis. It's not me saying this, it's international bodies that are saying this, and we have to start adapting, because I'm afraid as soon as the restrictions were lifted, we're back again with traffic. Yesterday, for example, I had a meeting in Marsa-Schlock, which took me again an hour. Before it was for 20 minutes to arrive. So we're back to starting to increase the problem. So nature has showed us that if we are given the time, it still isn't time to amend our problems. It's in our own hands. So if we want to change, we have to all change together. I mean, we have to work together with the authorities, ourselves, the public, to make this change happen. Otherwise, we will end up, I mean, humans are part of nature, all right? Today we're seeing hundreds of species becoming extinct every year. We are part of nature, and we could lead ourselves to becoming extinct ourselves. So we are in time now, the last chance to change our habits. And if we don't take this warning, I think Planet Earth in a way showed us, look, you can do it, maybe, all right, not in a nice way, but I think we have to stop and think about what happened and how we can move forward.
Thanks, Vincent. Prof. Gauci, some final comments.
Yes. Basically, what happened, as I see it, is that people were eager for things to go back to the normality. I think it's human nature to resist change. However, it would be very sad if we have done so many efforts. A lot of people have done a lot of efforts to be able to meet up with the way we had to live in order to control this virus. And it would be very sad if we had to remove all those good things that we actually captured. And as we said along this webinar, that everyone needs to see his own lifestyle, what he can do in order to be able to improve. We have been actually forced into doing some things, but some of them were good. So let's have a look back and see what we can do so that we can help the environment and also be better in our work as well. From the health authorities aspect, we have seen new modes of how we work. Okay, perhaps it wasn't so nice to be having to work till very late. However, we found new ways of working as well, and this has taught us a lot. But above all, for me, we have actually cherished the importance of human life. And human life, we need to see it from all aspects, not just the physical aspect, not only the mental health aspect, but also the quality of life that we want to live in the world we want to live in. So let's all fight for this.
Thanks, Profs, for those words. Now we're going over some of these questions that our audience have put up. And there was a discussion with regards to the heavy vehicles that are being used, including buses. This is for you, Conrad. Why does public transport service, especially in remote village locations, use large diesel buses? Would it not be wiser to invest in some smaller electric vehicles? This is one of the many questions that we have.
Very quickly, we are piloting an electric bus at the moment. The technology is still in its infancy, especially on heavier vehicles. Okay, so it's still very early, but we are piloting one at the moment. We have one in Malta and we're trying it out. Having said that, our buses are very clean. Our buses are Euro 6. The fleet that Malta has is the cleanest in Malta. The average age is 5 years compared to 14 years across Europe. But yes, there is still room to improve. And maybe there are other things. We don't even have to send a bus every time in a rural area. So you do on-demand services. We're piloting that as well. So if you need a bus, we'll send it. If you don't need a bus, we won't. So this is the way that we can start changing the way we use our resources. Not necessarily sending a bus every hour, every day, when there are certain times it will not carry people in a rural area, for example. I hope I answered the question. Thanks,
Conrad. I think you did answer the question. This next question is, I think, for all of you. One of our audience, Mary Gertie, highlighted that the problem is that hospital appointments, schools, where they all start at the same time. Unfortunately, this is very true. They all start between 7 a.m. and 8:30, and that is, of course, the worst time to be driving in Malta. Would you not agree, maybe, perhaps we could try to tackle this issue by spreading around the time during which appointments are located, schools start, etc.? I don't know who wants to address this question. Perhaps profs?
Yes, from our end, as many people would have been seeing, we are staggering appointments, not only so that people will not travel at the same time, but also to limit the amount of people who would be in the waiting rooms, etc. But unfortunately, we have a culture that people tend to still go early in the morning, sit down on that chair at the outpatients department and still wait. Okay, so that habit is very hard to change, but we need to change it. Okay, because we know that people will go in for the appointment at the time that they were given an actual appointment. In fact, we also have continually running as well appointments in the weekends and even at night for some investigations, like for example MRI, etc. With the schools, we had proposed this in the beginning, but we need to be careful how we can align everything together, because it's very difficult also, considering as well that we have the working parents as well who need to match up with the timings of the schools as well. But we also, mentioning schools, we had some experience as well with online teaching as well. So that was an experience where we had the children at home also having the lessons over the internet as well. But that led to other problems when you had the parents who were working at the same time. So we need to balance out and look outside the box and the whole picture.
Thanks, Prof. And I'm sure.
Maybe if I add, I think something that came out really was this meetings online. It's good because it reduced cars. When I have usually a day full of meetings, I managed to do 3-4 in a day, because you have to consider the going through traffic, finding a parking place, wasting time. You waste your time is money, as we know today. And when during the COVID, instead of 3-4, I was having 6-7. Okay, I'm not suggesting people kill themselves in meetings, but it showed that we could, for example, reduce the use of cars from the roads, because we meet just, we're a small island, we can just meet on the screen. If it's sometimes you have meetings, you go there for half an hour and it's over, and you spend 2 hours to go to that meeting, park, go in, say hello. So I think if we work towards changing also the way we do our practices during the day, I think we can reduce also traffic from the roads, because some of the people traveling are going to meetings, and it's a culture change that we have to push. Instead of having a meeting and everybody calls you, okay, come to my office, let's meet all on technology. We've seen that technology, if given the chance, people went for it, they found it good, and why now lose it? Let's use it. Okay.
Thanks, Vincent, and thanks, Prof. Gauci. Liane, this question is for you. Actually, I have two. The first one is with regards to the Open Spaces initiative, whether it's going to be retained or not, and whether it's going to be extended to further areas. And the second question tackles the fact that perhaps some people, now this is not my personal opinion, this is coming from the Q&A, some people that think that the Local Councils Association perhaps should focus more on enforcement. I don't know whether you have an opinion on this.
I will start from the enforcement question. Unfortunately, we don't have enforcement officers. We are not responsible. We are not responsible from the enforcement officers. LESA is on the good end. We are in close communication with LESA. So with regards to enforcement, it's LESA responsibility to do the enforcement, to actually remove the obstacles, issue fines, educate people, etc. It's not the local council per se. So we don't have much say on where are these enforcements located, etc. It's LESA role. On the other hand, with regards to the Open Spaces initiative, obviously, it's another pillar of our vision. We encourage more and more local councils to get on board. We are here to assist every local council, so even the residents, if they have most of the local councils are starting to do consultations with residents, because these need to be residents, the projects of residents, and not projects of the local council or the local council association or of a particular ministry. They need to be projects from residents to the residents. I mean, the residents' input is important. So we urge even the residents to do a little bit more pressure on the respective local council to get on board of our initiatives.
Thanks, Liane. And I think this brings us to a close. Thanks a lot to all four of you. I'm sure as much as I found it interesting, I'm sure the audience found it interesting. Your inputs are greatly appreciated. Thanks again. I hope the audience loved it as much as I did, and we'll be looking forward to the next webinar, which will be starting very shortly. Thank you all, and have a very nice afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.